If you were to photograph doom and gloom, what exactly would it look like? What's up, everyone, and welcome to the Fervent Four. Did you know that only 4% of businesses ever cross the annual $1 million revenue mark? Hello, I'm Zack Miller, author of Anomaly, and with me today I have my co-host, Tim Ryan, lead man at StartWheel.org. Thank you so much for joining us. Oh, it says ... I'm not supposed to say that out loud. Oops. The Fervent Four is a weekly show each and every Thursday at 11 a.m. dedicated to sharing insights into growing a world-class business no matter the climate. Nick Sutton has been taking pictures for a while. And at some point, he had so much equipment that he thought he could help out his fellow photographers and let them rent his gear. That led to the opening of Digital Lens Rental in downtown Norfolk and then in Richmond during the times when businesses don't expand, aka 2020. God, I was on a roll. Ladies and gentlemen, Nick Sutton.
Hello, fellas.
What's up, Nick? Good to see you.
How's it going? Good to see both of you.
2020.
You should copyright that, man.
2020. How I was on the old buy a new domain recently site, and maybe that's one I'll buy is 2020.com. How would you spell that?
I'm not even going to try.
I know, man.
TWENTY.
Just ask a 4 or 5-year-old. They'll knock it out of the park.
Okay, so Nick, how should I spell that?
I don't know.
Okay, so do you remember, like, when you grew up, was like photography something that you were into? What? Because as I was writing that opening, I couldn't actually remember when you got into photography.
Yeah, so I really didn't get into photography until probably 2008, 2009, and got real serious about it in 2012. That's when I officially started Kinetic Stills, which is the parent company, and then Digital Lens Rental is a DBA from that. But yeah, it was pretty much later in life when I got really into photography, and what actually really got me started was going to see the space shuttle launch. So I was like, hey, I want to take some camera gear down there and see the shuttle launch. So
we're in Florida.
Yeah, Cape Canaveral.
That's cool.
So I was lucky enough to see the last launch of the shuttle, which was pretty cool.
And you had photography gear there, or it was afterwards? Or you're like, man, I missed out. I need to see that.
No, I definitely went down there knowing that I needed camera gear. So actually, we had to go down a couple of times. The first time we went down, it got scrubbed. But I had bought a entry-level camera and an entry-level lens. And then the second time we went down there, I said, maybe I want to take a better lens. And, you're still so far away, but it's still just one of those things that I wanted to do. I wanted to take a camera down there and take my own pictures. So,
are you considered a new school technology guy or an old school technology guy from the camera?
I'm definitely a new school guy. I never really dabbled in film at all. And film, even in high school, I know a lot of these high schools have film as a program, and even some of these colleges, but I never went through that. In high school, I was more of like the design and architectural side of things. So I did like drafting and design classes. And then when I went to college, that's what I did there is I did mechanical design. So
where'd you go to school? I can't remember.
I went to Thomas Nelson.
You did?
Forever.
Van Wilder, ladies and gentlemen, Van Wilder.
I think that's to me, that's the way to go, man. I mean,
I never had intentions on going to college. And so when I got out of high school, I was like, all right, I'm going to get a job. I'm 18. I'm going to, make all this money. And then I started working. I was like, wow, this is really hard to make a lot of money. So I was like, I need to go to college. So my parents, I'm fortunate enough. They're like, we'll pay for 2 years of college. So I was like, okay, well, if I go away to college, I'm probably going to fail out because I can't keep focus. So I went to Thomas Nelson. And just the way it worked out is, I got my 2-year degree, my associate's degree, and then landed into another job who paid for college. So I went for another degree that would help me move up, and then went for another degree. So I have 3 associate's degrees, which is hilarious, but that's just the way it panned out.
Do 3 associate degrees equal 1 bachelor's?
It's so funny. If you look at the credits, I have 18 months or something like that left to get a bachelor's, but I mean, at this point, it's not something that I'm even really interested in because I use my degrees now, but I don't think another piece of paper is going to change the way the digital lens rental operates, or I don't think it's going to change my lifestyle or what happens to me in the future any more than it has. So,
And it's interesting. I don't think Tim or I were thinking we were going to talk about college in this, but let's talk about it for a minute. So, I went to community college for 2 years. You went to community college for what, like 17 years, it sounds like.
Yep.
And Tim,
I went to community college is for the
You
Air
did?
Force. Yep.
I didn't know. Okay, I thought you immediately went to Leo, whatever that was.
No, yeah. In the Air Force, you start with the community college of the Air Force. So that was my first associate's degree.
So it's interesting, and as I know, you have family looking and exploring into going to that next level, Tim. And I think historically, you think, okay, college is a place where you go away, hopefully, and they go and do the college experience. And I think that experience is absolutely tremendous. I went to West Virginia University, and it was a glorious time after community college. But the community college aspect of it, I think, is something that makes sense, especially now with, I mean, can you imagine going to school, paying for school in the way that you would, and then you're basically sitting at home getting that other degree or that college experience? It seems a little like ridiculous if you really think about it.
I mean, I think I'm a perfect example of why four-year colleges straight out of high school it doesn't make much sense, because I'm somewhat ADD when it comes to focusing on certain things. Like, I think I want to do something and I start doing it, and I'm like, I don't really want to do that. That's not for me. And coming out of high school, I was like, I just want to work on cars. That was my hobby. I loved cars. I started working on cars, and I was like, this is really difficult. This isn't what I want to do as a living. This is more of a hobby. And so then that's when I got into design. It was more fulfilling to do that. And it started out as drafting and design, and then
specialized.
Right. Yeah. Very specialized. And so you have these kids coming out of high school who they may think they want to be a welder or something, and they realize, hey, I'd rather do welding on the side as a hobby. Or maybe they go, hey, I want to be an accountant, but they're like, I'd rather be a welder. It's just, I think jumping straight into it for college isn't necessarily a mistake, but I think it's something that kids don't really look deep into and go, yeah, that's what I should do. Because, I mean, you've said it before, if you're going to go to college and have $85,000 in debt, once you get out of college, guess what? Someone's paying that $85,000 back. So,
and it's probably a lot more than $85,000.
Yeah.
You know what's interesting? I recently read this somewhere, I think, or maybe I came up with it. I'm sure I wasn't smart enough to come up with this. You would know that, Nick. But it basically was like, go to community college, but then when you go to another college, that's what overlaps that. That's what overtakes that. And so it's like the last college that you go to is the one that matters, right? So while I'm talking about community college, I don't talk about it really. I talk about WVU. Right. And so it's interesting. So like I have a degree from WVU, where Northern Virginia Community College, shout out to Nova, is the thing that's getting those credits rolled in. But it's interesting how that last college is the one that really gets the love. And so it's interesting. And as colleges have continued to grow in the amount of money that they want students to give, I think it's definitely something that more people need to really look strongly at. When you're talking
about real quick, and speaking of WVU, can you put a link somewhere where people can, I don't know, here or there, where they can see your B-rolls of all your sports and everything from WVU? Because they're classic. They're classic.
Okay. Next time I go off the screen, I'm gonna go look for that link. I am going to do it. Okay, so, but you said something interesting in there that I think we can articulate down into a couple of things. So the last college is the thing that matters, right? Mm-hmm. But then if you're looking at getting into a career, call that company or call someone in that company and say you want an apprenticeship to start seeing if you actually like that job. And I think that's something that takes too long in your traditional schools to really figure out. It's like, hey, you want to be a welder? Let's get you starting to weld a little bit. Hey, you want to get into business? Let's get you into business a little bit, and not just doing what you're doing right now, Nick, and just, drinking coffee and getting coffee for people. That's BS, right? Like because that, to me, like, I feel like if I was to knock on WVU, like, they didn't really push, or at least I didn't pay attention enough to see that they pushed this, like, get into the journalism world and really figure out what you're going to be doing in that.
Right.
And I think that's important. And I think more schools and more people between the ages of 16 and 22 need to start figuring out, like, okay, this is the career that you want. Go immerse yourself in that thing. Let's see if you can even make it a week. And then after a week, let's go 30 days. Right?
I think
days, go 90 days. Let's get out of that honeymoon phase.
Yeah, I think I heard something or read something that like right now the average age of a plumber is like 57 years old.
It's crazy.
So I mean, I don't know if I was a young kid right now looking to disrupt something. I mean, that's just got something like that has opportunity all over it. Trade schools get way they don't get enough credit.
Yeah, trades is what really runs this world, and they're just going to be so dominant here in the next 10 years.
Yeah, and I'll continue the streak of Elon Musk references on this show. But I mean, so he's hiring more. They can't hire enough people, and the last thing he cares about is where you went to college, what your GPA was. You know, he just wants people that are motivated, and he'll train everybody. I mean, you can't take a college class on putting people up into space. I don't know. You know more. You know that world, Nick.
Yeah, a little bit. It's really interesting if you look at Elon Musk, where he came from, what he's done, and where he's going. There's no way you go to school for that,
right?
You surround yourself with greatness. I understand that, but you also have to have that vision to do that, and you got to say, "Hey, I want to make an electric car that's mass produced, and while we're at it, let's send people to Mars." That's crazy. It's just crazy.
Yeah, you can't. Are we gonna? There.
Oh yes, so good.
I don't know that you can hear it. Can you hear it?
Look at that. Are those flat front khakis or are those pleated khakis, Zach?
Oh God, that's ridiculous.
How many views does that have? Not enough. I don't know, but not enough.
Yeah.
Not enough. 98.
We need to get that trending so that we can boost the views.
Oh, God. I think when I posted on Facebook, that one has a little bit more views, but I'll post it on Facebook just for you today, Nick.
I appreciate that. It's so good.
Oh God. I mean, I don't know. It is what it is, but you guys are talking about Elon Musk. Sorry.
No, I mean,
he's a crazy mastermind. He's insane.
I mean, you can't publish a textbook fast enough for it to even be relevant.
Yeah.
Right.
More culinary students need to think about this. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like, I think that I get why it's not, right? Who is paying? People will say this doesn't matter too, by the way, but it does matter because it's from a revenue perspective. Why culinary students and any student from an apprenticeship, what we're talking about, why this matters is who is driving that revenue? The advertiser. Who is driving that? Who is the advertiser? A bigger school, right? And so, journalistically, you're not supposed to, but it trickles down. Let's be honest.
What's interesting now in this day and age, you have let's talk culinary for a second, right? You can go to culinary school, and in your head you're thinking, all I'm going to do is I'm going to be a chef. Maybe I want to be a Michelin star chef somewhere.
I want to be Chris. Yep.
You want to be Chris Helm. But really, you have so many different avenues because one thing we do now is we watch YouTube, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who watch this also watch Maddie Matheson, and the dude probably makes more money on his YouTube videos than he ever would have in a restaurant because now he's got a book. He does his YouTube skits with everything, and it's just, there's so many avenues to go other than just having to work in
I think the industry doesn't matter, right? There are going to be specialists who become internet sensations across the board. There's actually a kid from Richmond who ran at William & Mary. His name's Zach Levitt. You probably know him, Tim.
Yep.
I know Rich Saunders has talked about him before, but he basically quit school and now is doing his YouTube thing. And he's, got 100,000 subscribers on that because he realizes that his career as a runner probably wasn't going to be as big as it could be from this thing that he has more talent in, which is running as the core, but using this media juggernaut to help accelerate that. And I think that's what you're getting at, is Maddie Matheson has that skill, right? So what is your skill? And then can you capitalize off of that skill onto another media platform to get that out there to then be strong enough to make money off of?
Yeah, take that one step further. I mean, so all of us, and Nick, credit to you, man. I mean, you're going out there and you're doing things, you're trying things. I mean, right now, people that are in school, they're probably learning about case studies that are 20, 30 years old. And there's not a case study that you can look at right now to get you through everything that's going on. So now, if you want to succeed in business, it's a matter of getting out there and trying new things and solving pain points and people's problems and making a business around it. So that's what you're doing. And the way that you started your business is awesome. In terms of how you started with the Facebook group, talk about that for a second. That's how you start a business.
Yeah, so it's kind of an interesting road of how I actually started. So, Hampton Roads Photographers Network is the Facebook group, and it kind of just happened to be where we were all talking about there's no photography related companies in our area, and we had nowhere to go. There's no resources. And so me and my buddy Jerry Navarrete were talking about it. I was like, hey man, I have this idea. Like, I'd like to have a camera store, but I don't want to sell equipment. I'd rather just rent the equipment. And so, we had talked about it, and then he one day was like, hey, Nick's opening up a camera rental store. And it was kind of like that push off the cliff. And it's like, all right, you're off the cliff, learn to fly, right? That kind of situation. And the group was very responsive, and we've grown. I think at that time we were probably around maybe 1,800 or 2,000 members in that group, and now we're around 4,600, 4,700, I believe.
Wow.
And
I forgot about the Facebook group aspect of this.
Yeah, I mean really the Facebook group is probably the reassurance that it could sustain.
Well, you had a network of people that you could very quickly, ask a question to figure out if it was going to work or not. I mean, if those people didn't reassure you, you wouldn't have gone ahead and done a lot of the things that you've done.
And what makes it super easy is the fact that you have 4,800 people, whether or not they see it because of Facebook algorithm or whatever, but you have this group of people that you simply go, hey, I'm thinking about carrying this piece of equipment. Does this interest any of you? And 10 comments, 10 comments, people say, yes, absolutely. Or, yeah, but I'd rather have XYZ. So you have your customers automatically telling you, yes, carry XYZ or carry, ABC. It makes it so much easier. It's just like real-time feedback on what you should do to help your business grow and what you need to carry and who you need to support.
Yeah, I'm jumping ahead a little bit. I think that was an awesome way, just for lack of better terms, textbook in terms of how you started your business. The other thing that I thought was really awesome, and I share this story quite a bit when I talk to people when I'm out and about, was, what was it? A couple of years ago, you and we had met for lunch. And at that point, the government had just shut down because they couldn't get their budget passed. And were you furloughed? Was that what was?
Yep.
And
this was probably the first time, I would think. I think it was 2012 was the first time we got furloughed. Or maybe it was 2015, I don't remember.
Yeah, but I mean, what you did with that, a lot of people these days, man, they act like the sky is falling and, I don't know what I'm going to do. I just say, I'm not getting a job. But what you did was awesome. And hopefully, you know what I'm talking about, where you can pick up, man. But you took the opportunity to say, all right, I don't have to go into my 9 to 5. I'm going to really go out and hustle and see if I can make this a sustainable business. Talk about that a little bit. Because that's awesome.
Yeah. So working for the government and having these shutdowns, it sucks for a lot of people. I'm not going to say that it doesn't suck for a lot of people, because a lot of people don't have anything to fall back on, but it was the perfect opportunity. And it's one of those things that's out of your control. Like, we can all freak out and run up and down the street screaming our heads off about how insane a government shutdown is, or any situation that is out of our control. But again, It's out of our control. We just have to sit back and go, okay, what can we do as a plan B? What is our plan B? How can we take advantage of the situation? And so with the first furlough and the second furlough and now COVID, I haven't actually been to work since March 24th, and been doing teleworking, and there's just so many opportunities, and I think people let the bad situation overshadow the opportunity. And if you can take advantage of that opportunity, even if it's something minute, even if it gives you 5 more minutes in the day to do whatever it is, exercise or talk to your parents or do whatever it is, you're taking advantage of an opportunity you didn't have. And a downside to that is I don't listen to as many audiobooks because I'm not driving to work. So I'm trying to make it a better habit now to listen to more audiobooks. So
I got a book for you.
what's it called?
I don't know.
It is funny that you mentioned that, though, Nick. I had to run up to Williamsburg yesterday, and so I had an hour to kill and knocked out a podcast on my trip up there and back, and I forgot I missed that.
Yeah, it's so nice. I started listening to a new book, and it gets to the point where like I get home and I'm like, oh, there's 17 minutes left. Do I just sit in the car and listen to it and act kind of weird in the driveway, or
right?
But yeah, I just think no matter whatever the situation is, if it's out of your control, which a lot of the times things are out of your control, just try to see what you can do, on the positive side. Just see what little change you can do to your business, because just a little bit of something may make a huge change down the road. So
I think sustainability is something that people have trusted in a business for a long time, and I think as technology, and maybe this happened before. Maybe it didn't, but as technology gets stronger, and I think companies understand that they can act leaner and work leaner, I think people haven't yet, but are starting to realize that, hey, like, you can own your own business and lose customers or your job, but that thing can also happen when you work at a career too,
Right.
just like that. And I think people, and maybe it's because it's been instilled in us, growing up. That's what, that was the career that you're supposed to be. You go work somewhere and work there forever and yada, yada, yada. And entrepreneurship was not something that was quote unquote taught when I was in school. And I think it's starting to be taught a little bit in schools. I still don't believe that those people really want you to start a business. I still think they want you to go down that same career path. And then if you want to open a business after you have all those other things, then it's the safe bet to do, right? But you can get fired at any point. And living in Virginia, you can get fired for anything, right? And so you look at the last year and you got all these people who, and I hope people aren't listening and thinking, they're not respecting COVID and they're not respecting we absolutely are understanding what's happening. But we also understand that you control that a lot more. Like, you don't know the inside of a business. You don't know how close that guy was to keeping you around pre or post or during COVID, right? Like, you just don't know. But if you want to control more of that, there's a way to participate in that. Kevin Deja just said this thing right here: big risk, big reward, right? And I think the one thing that always ticks me off about mandates and government initiatives and things like that is when it's like everything's based on the employee, yet they're not really taking the same risk as the employer. And so it's frustrating to see stuff where it's like, oh, you have to do this thing. It's like, oh, but I mean, you just want to get a paycheck. And look, if you just want to get a paycheck, then just go get your paycheck, right? But realize that paycheck can go away at any time because you haven't taken the risk. You haven't bet on yourself the way that other people have. And I think whether you like or dislike that person or not, you have to respect what they're willing to do. And I think that's incredibly important. And I think Nick has done this in a really interesting way where it's like, hey, like, I'm still going to collect that check, and I'm going to figure out a way to control my life more, in the off season, which just happens to be 5 to 9 every day.
Yeah, and you, I guess you can talk to it more, Nick, in the sense of it allows you to reinvest into your business more so because you're not dependent on the revenue that you generate from your other business. But anyway, to recap real quick, I mean, so you started a Facebook group. You developed a community, or a community was developed that kind of validated that you're going to be able to solve a problem. You then took advantage of a government shutdown to really take the business into the next gear. Then fast forward a couple months later, a couple years later, and then you look to expand. And so you recently opened up a second location. How did that process work? How did you narrow down where to go and what to do? Talk about the next journey.
So it was crazy to start off opening a second location during this pandemic. It's insane to even comprehend what we just did, because you have all these businesses closing because they don't have the revenue coming in, and here we are like, yeah, let's just do this. But I think it's one of those situations where,
is it that crazy though, or is it just that the narrative that you're hearing is that only businesses are doing negative? Because there are plenty of businesses that I think are not getting the limelight during COVID as well that are expanding. Not to diminish
right?
that stuff, but
you're totally right. I think it's one of those perceptions that everyone is failing, and in reality, it's not everyone's failing. It's people are definitely having harder times than others, right? Restaurants are struggling, bars are struggling, entertainment venues are struggling. But at the same time, you have to look and see what information, what data do you have there that can support another location. So, we had always been on the fence that we wanted to open a second location because we're fulfilling something that these other companies can't do. We're in person. We're letting people touch the equipment before they rent it. They can come try it out anytime they want, and people like that. They would rather come to us and talk to us and have in person conversations and call us on the phone and chat and know our communities and talk about our communities, rather than just go place an order online and just wait for UPS or FedEx to show up and then have to sign for the package and deal with shipping. So, like I said, we'd always talked about opening a second location. We weren't sure where to do it. Originally, I said we're going to do it on the peninsula, so somewhere between Newport News, Hampton, Yorktown, Williamsburg, somewhere in that area. And thinking more about it, I said, well, our main clientele now is Virginia Beach in the South Side, and the next largest population density would be Richmond. So if you live in Williamsburg, you have the opportunity to go to Norfolk or Richmond, and it's similar distance. So I said, well, let's just go on the outside of Richmond, because that probably makes the most sense to have the most density of people and hit a new group of people, and a new clientele and a new customer that we can grow into Richmond, and most likely open multiple locations just in Richmond, and then open a location on the peninsula. And it just made more sense looking at what opportunity was in Richmond versus what opportunity was on the peninsula, just because the people on the peninsula have the opportunity to go south or north or west, however you want to look at it, to the store. So
really, is it more you were able to go deeper into that? You were able to expand into a newer market if you were to be closer to Richmond, rather than maybe take a chunk out of your current market that you were currently doing if you were to just open on the peninsula?
Right. So the peninsula, I pulled the numbers a really long time ago, probably in 2018 is when I pulled the numbers, but it was something like 23% of our customers were coming from the peninsula. And
23%?
That was it, 23%. The majority of everybody else was, it's some crazy number for Virginia Beach. It's like 50 some percent, and then everything else trickles out between Suffolk and Chesapeake and Portsmouth. But it just didn't make sense to pull away from our Norfolk store. And I know that with the HRBT and the way traffic is, it makes it hard for a lot of people to get to Norfolk, but it just made more sense to go to Richmond. Just a new community, new clientele, and a lot more people to target and
really you can market it more. You got the Williamsburg community in there. I mean, that yeah. Can we play a game of like quick answers?
Ooh,
I don't.
yeah,
I don't know if we've ever
I
done
like this.
that. Tim, do you want to play?
I'd love to.
Okay.
Every
Feel free
answer is Zack Miller.
Let me look at these questions again that I see if that actually fits in there. Okay, favorite beard?
Favorite beard? Who are you asking?
Either.
In terms of like of the three of us right now, or just in general?
I was just giving you a question that you could answer Zack Miller with.
Oh,
It would clearly
Oh.
be me. No, I lost that one already. Okay, mostly
It was
photography.
better when it was longer. Like you had the long beard. That looked all right.
I agree. It's not cold enough yet. Okay, I'm going to ask a couple of photography-based questions.
Okay.
If I'm starting a business, or if I'm looking to explore into photography, new or used equipment,
Starting out, I'd say used.
and how far back can someone go from a?
This
Is it like cell phones, where like if you go too far back, you're screwed?
No, I think everybody at this point starts with cell phones. So I mean, you shouldn't have a problem with that. And I mean, it doesn't matter how far back you go. So sorry, I get this thing beeping at me. But yeah, cell phones is probably where most people start, especially kids these days. They're going to start with a cell phone, and camera technology is so good. I mean, it's gotten good ever since the 90s. I mean, and even before that with film, it's still good. You can use a film camera and get great shots. The processing's more complicated, but you
How
can
important is
take
a
the
light
cheapest
in that
camera
stuff?
and get great images.
With good lighting, though?
I mean, it's kind of yes and no. It depends on what you're trying to do. I mean, you don't have to have light to have great images. I mean, look
Got
at shadows.
where does the real skill come in? Is it taking the pictures, or is it editing post taking the pictures?
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, it's a creative mind. If you have any sort of creative mind, you are the artist. So you look at painting, right? Where does the skill come in? Some of us will look at some art and say, I don't know what that is, and some of us look at other art and go, okay, there's no way I could do that, right? So I really think it depends on the person and what you're trying to go after. If you're shooting a specific aspect of photography, if you're shooting sports, for example, there's some general guidelines you're going to follow, but at the same time, you have so much creativity where you might think,
probably shutter speed too in there, right? Where you can.
yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like your shutter speed, everybody's going to say you're shooting sports, so you're shooting a really high shutter speed. Well, not exactly. If you guys recall the Usain Bolt picture, they used a really slow shutter speed where he was running and he was looking back at his competitors during the Olympics. That was dragging your shutter. So it's a really slow shutter speed. So there's no inside the box, outside the box. There is no box. You are creative how you want to be creative. You can shoot from any angle. You can shoot with any shutter speed. If you like the grain, bump up your ISO forever. I mean, it just depends.
It's kind of like the apprenticeship stuff that we were talking about earlier, and this is something that Dan Gerard, longtime listener of the show, talks a lot about. He helped me buy my bike, and he was like, "Look, I could tell you to buy a really expensive bike, but I would rather you start liking the sport first on an entry level, rather than buying this expensive bike and never using it." And I think it's kind of the same thing here, where it's like, hey, like, put a foot in to the pool and see if you're even going to like swim a little bit more. Because a lot of people buy equipment, and that's why what I love about digital lens rental is like, it's like, you know what, you want to try this out first? Why don't you rent it for $95 for the weekend, or however much it is, and $250 for the weekend. I just escalated your
Nice.
Increased your profits 15,000%. See, math maker, they have 15,000% now. But yeah, I mean,
WVU education.
So what?
WVU education.
All right, Thomas Nelson. As a photographer, I see a lot of people when they do videos that they have glasses, they get their screen reflected back on them, including the person I'm talking to now. How do you remove that? Because I would think a photographer who was going on a show live wouldn't have a glare in their glasses, because I don't have it.
Well, you're probably using a laptop, aren't you?
Aren't you using a laptop?
No, I've got a 49-inch ultra wide monitor that is 4 feet wide. So unfortunately, I
Not
have no
entry
way.
level.
It's not an entry level monitor, and unfortunately, it's very limited as to what I can do. But I will tell you a trick.
But
If
look,
you,
see, you throw the light on.
yeah, that's true. One thing you can do if you take portraits and you have glasses, like, so I just shot a bunch of headshots. So take your
Whoa.
glasses. It's a trick. All right. So when your glasses are sitting in your face, just take this back part and tilt the back part up, because all you're doing is you're reflecting the light off of your glasses. So the problem is when you have a light hit your glasses here, it goes right into the camera. So just simple.
Okay, so what about someone doing a video though?
So video just don't have a giant screen in front of you, because you're gonna want angled lights anyways. And even then, you can adjust your lights in certain situations where you're not gonna have the reflection on your glasses.
I have a light on my desk that I point towards my wall, and it pushes
Yeah.
back, and I think it
Yep.
glares enough back to yeah.
Yep.
But I just wanted to,
Call me out. I understand.
Yeah. That's exactly what I want to do.
Tim does have the better beard, but I didn't want to say anything. But now I'm not holding back.
That's fine. Selling creativity. When you're selling creativity, which is something that I think in the photography industry that you do, there's an ounce of creative control. How do you sell that to a potential client and even a client, and then get them to accept it, even if it's not exactly what they asked for? And I know that question is kind of loaded and all over the place a little bit, but I think you get what I'm saying, where it's like, hey, like I'm gonna go photograph this thing for you. You're gonna hire me to be your photographer. I'm going to take a picture of this, but I'm gonna Nick Suttonify it a little bit. How do you get them to accept that creativity in a creative business?
Well, I think going into it, the client needs to understand that this is how I photograph things. This is my style, if you will. And they shouldn't be hiring you and saying, yeah, I've never seen any of your work. Just take pictures, because it's so much more than that. Some people like moody lighting. Some people like light and airy. Some people like more documentary style. Some people, there's up close, and headshots is a perfect example. You look at someone's headshot and they shoot it one way, and then you go look at someone like Peter Hurley and he shoots it completely different, and it's in your face, up close, extremely bright. So you really need to emphasize to your customers and your clients, hey, this is my style. This is the way I think creatively this image should be. But if you're looking for something else, I'm open to that idea. If I can shoot it that way, if I understand your vision, then we can move forward. If not, don't go through the headache, because a lot of the times you hear so many stories where people are like, oh, I worked with this client and they wanted XYZ and it just didn't work out because I couldn't see their vision, or they couldn't see my vision, and I didn't understand what they want, and they couldn't properly communicate what they wanted. So I think
you may know him as Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. I know him as just a man who has done incredible things for the last few decades. But how can you use his techniques in your business? I'll show you exactly how. Head on over to ZackMillerSays.com/The Rock, and you can smell what he's cooking.
So, Nick,
real quick, that commercial is a good example, because they said, hey, we need an image of The Rock that's very profound, like very dominant. How are we going to light it? Right?
Yeah.
A million different people could shoot that a million different ways. So anyways, I digress.
No, I wanted to touch base. So you gave the glasses tip to reduce the amount of glare.
Yep.
But that's one of the things that you do. You are really, really free in terms of helping other folks, teaching them some things. And that's because that's the more that you can teach photographers, the more that hopefully the more gigs that they get, and that's going to increase business for you. What's your thought on that? Is that something that you continue to do on your end to share more and more information, or is that just a benefit of you just like to help?
I just, to my core, I just love helping people, and I love seeing the excitement of someone, right? And I'm sure it's the same for you when you have someone come to you with a new business idea that has potential. You're like, well, look at the fire in their eyes, and they're they're go-getter at this point. They want to learn as much as they possibly can learn. And I'm the same way. It's nice seeing people who have a true passion to want to learn photography. And I don't know everything. So when someone comes to me and tells me how to do something or how something was shot, it's nice to know. It's something to think about. It's, you know, it's endless on the amount of knowledge you can have. And when you get a group of people together, you continually learn. So I mean, you don't have any limitations. So teaching people and talking to people about what inspires them is awesome, because you get to see them grow. You get to see them start from the beginning, and you get to see them implement ideas and concepts and, things they may have talked about, or, you know, just an idea you might have put in their head, say, hey, shoot this with this lens versus this lens, and see what kind of different angles and shots you can get with it. And it's just fun.
What about the financial aspect of it? And sorry, Tim. Just to piggyback off that, the financial aspect of it, of how much money you potentially are losing because you're teaching someone how to do your own thing. Like, how does that go into that conversation, or that thought process of teach to teach?
I think if you're worried and you're concerned about losing customers and losing clients, you're not really focused on keeping your business successful anyways. You have to do more than just bring in revenue. I mean, if you're willing to show people what you do and you're afraid of them stealing your work because they're going to do things exactly the same as you, do things a little differently. You have to always evolve. Ask us 2 years ago, hey, what are you going to do when everything in the United States shuts down? And if I told you that's never going to happen, guess what? Here we are. We all are evolving, whether we like it or not. But, I could go to one photographer and talk to them about, hey, what have you done now that you've lost all your gigs? For example, I shoot sports, concerts, and real estate. And guess what I lost most of? All of my sports and all of my concerts. So I had real estate. So it's like, hey, luckily the real estate market's good. Let's keep going with the real estate while we can, and then figure out what we need to do to keep shooting sports or concerts, or just focus solely on real estate and try to pick up more realtors to shoot for. And that's what we did.
American Idol comes to mind in that vein too, where American Idol, maybe not the first competition, but probably the biggest competition show ever in your kind of traditional media, broadcast media, primetime package of shows. But how many people copied something like that over and over again and have never been able to succeed the exact same way? I mean, the only one that might be close at this point is Masked Singer, you would think.
Well, I mean, The Voice got pretty big for a while. Yeah. I mean, didn't they surpass American Idol?
All right. Well, I don't know the stats. I'm just throwing out Zach's stats here, but
you're exactly right.
A lot of people try a lot of different things that might be copying what someone else is doing, and they don't really. Only one really wins. Lydia says, "Let's talk about how it's been to run a small business during a pandemic." What do you think, Nick?
Yeah, the struggle is real. I mean, it's
emotion-wise, like, is it hard? You go through it a lot?
Oh, I mean, yeah. I mean, last night going to bed, all you think about is numbers and what do we need to do to change, and what can we do to save money, and what can we do to spend less money, because it comes down to spending less money and surviving at this point. And the audiobook that I'm listening to, it talks about the roller coaster of income, and the one thing you can't control is how much money you're spending. And a lot of people just look at a bank account and go, oh, I have X amount of dollars, we're fine. Oh, I have X amount of dollars, we're fine. And then all of a sudden you lose revenue and you go, oh, we don't have money in the bank account, now what? So trying to get the expenses under control, and understanding, hey, we're spending a little too much here, or maybe we need to refine a process in our system, or we need to focus on what is making us money. Like, for example, we do repairs and calibrations and sensor cleaning, and those are profitable for us, and it helps the community, and it helps people that have downtime get their equipment cleaned or fixed or whatever. And it's a perfect time to focus on that item, because if we lose customers who don't have events or anything to shoot, hey, let's take care of your equipment while we can, And then when you get customers and clients back ready for you to shoot again, your stuff's ready to go. So
Yeah. So how do you balance that? You touched on something. So you're looking at numbers, you're focused on your bank account, but at the same time, I'm sure that there's got to be a balance of bringing in new equipment so that can bring in new customers, so that you're not focused on something that may or may not be out of date. How has your decision making changed based on the pandemic of how much or how frequently you update your equipment, or where are you at with that?
yeah, so that's definitely something we are continually figuring out. It's not, there's no right or wrong answer. It's kind of a guess. You think that you can ask this community of 4,800 people, hey, what do you, if I bring this in, are you interested in it? Everybody could say yes, right? You fill out a survey and everybody clicks A for every answer. That doesn't mean that it's accurate information. And so
Right.
you could bring in new equipment, doesn't mean it's going to rent. And then here you have, $5, 10, $15,000 of equipment just sitting there, and you're like, well, is someone gonna use this stuff? So it's kind of a guessing game, and I think you can see trends, but even with trends, if you look at our data and our sales and our all the information that we have available to us, it's a little skewed because there's some items we have more of, so they're obviously going to rent more. So it looks like, hey, you could keep carrying more, you can keep carrying more, but at some point you're going to carry so much that you're going to have so many of those lenses, and you're going to have a bulk of money sitting there, and you're not really making money back. And it's going to take even longer to make that money back. So it's kind of a guessing game, and it's kind of hit or miss trying to figure out what does work and what doesn't work.
Is that just it, a guessing game, hit or miss? Because you hear a lot of people, a lot of business professionals tell you, go lean, MVP it, prototype, get surveys out there. And I think that's great and dandy, and that stuff can work. But there's still a sense of like, who is filling out that form?
Right.
How serious was that person? And was that person serious enough to pull out their wallet during that situation? Are they just filling it out because it's your mom and they're trying to be nice? Like, I think there's a lot of things that can go into that, and so like obviously there's a risk in that. But like, do you have a formula in there to directly with equipment?
I mean, there's not. Here's a good example. So when we opened Richmond, we said we did a little brief survey with everything. What we did was, when we opened Richmond, we said, hey, for this week, this opening week, we're going to give free sensor cleanings to anyone who wants to come in. Doesn't matter if we know you or not. Come in, we'll clean your sensor on your camera. But the catch was that when you had to check out online, and we had an information box that said, what gear would you like us to carry? And that really helped us to figure out that when we thought that we were going to have more Nikon users in Richmond, it's kind of not true. It's more Sony, Canon, but there's more Nikon users than this area, in the Hampton Roads area. But we were going in thinking it was going to be Nikon all day long in Richmond, and that wasn't the case. So I think surveys and pinging people helps, but I don't think you actually know until you do it.
So
you have no data. You have no data to base it off of.
And I like the idea of food courts, right? And I think you've kind of food courted this a little bit, right? And so you go around, and historically you could go to a food court and someone would hand you a piece of General Tso's chicken, or General Tso's tofu in my case, I guess right now. Nick, did you know that I stopped eating meat? I don't know if you knew that. So you get a piece of General Tso's chicken, right? And then if you like it, you try it out, you eat it, and then you buy more of it, right? And so I think you can maybe make the assumption that the person who's willing to come in to get their camera cleaned is someone that's willing to probably come back and pick up equipment,
right?
Because that's there. And then I like that you had that kind of survey in there. So it's really going deep into the survey of trying to figure out what stuff to hold in there. And so I think
it goes a little deeper than that too, because when we ran that promotion, not only did we get the survey information, but we got the word of mouth out. Now that people knew that we were there, one, they could be like, hey, they're doing free sensor cleanings this week. come in here and do their sensor cleaning. But then later they can go, oh yeah, there was that company. I can't remember their name. They're in Richmond. They rent camera equipment, and then they Google it, and guess what? Word of mouth now has all transpired from free sensor cleanings.
And that's something that I don't think people consider enough is when is that person actually ready to buy?
Right. Yeah,
Right.
I mean,
like in your case, someone just because someone gets a cleaning, that doesn't mean that they're immediately ready to buy a lens, but that doesn't mean that they're not going to buy 6 months from now and then every quarter once.
Yep.
Right. To me, that's probably like, do you have a customer regularity that where like how often do people come in? Right. It's probably not every weekend. I mean, maybe you have customers that come in 52 times, but like it's
we have some regulars, which is nice, but and you know, we talk to them. We're like, you know, Lydia, who runs Norfolk in Richmond, she's operation manager. She tells people, you know, she'll be like, okay, you're gonna stop renting from us. I feel like you're gonna stop renting. They're like, no, like we prefer to rent because we don't have to carry the overhead of this equipment, which makes complete sense.
Do you operate both stores in a sense of? I'm thinking that it lowers your risk if, like you said, if you think that there's more Nikon users in Richmond, but it turns out there's not. Do you shift inventory around between stores so that you can mitigate the risk?
Yeah, and so and Tim's aware of our website, so you know we actually have two separate websites who operate as separate stores, and we do want to integrate them as one, but right now they're separate. So if we need something that needs to go from Richmond to Norfolk or vice versa, we'll just meet in the middle in Williamsburg and transition those lenses. And we work with customers too who say, hey, you know, we want a specific lens, but you guys don't carry it. And we're like, oh, well, we carry it in Norfolk. Let's see, you know, when do you want it? If we can bring it to Richmond, we'll, you know, coordinate to let you rent it. It's not that big of a deal. And there's not that many pieces of equipment in Norfolk that we don't carry in Richmond or vice versa. It's pretty equal. I mean, there's a handful of gear, but the main items that rent the most are at both locations.
we can teleport that at some point soon.
I hope.
Hey, Zach, throw the website back up. I want to give Nick a plug because I think one of the coolest resources on the site, at least, and I don't know if you've added this for Richmond or not, but you have a map on your website of all the places to take great pictures, and I think that is super cool.
I hope it's.
Do you have one for Richmond?
We don't have one in Richmond, and the problem with Richmond is so detailed, and like there's so many areas to shoot in Richmond. Like just right outside of our store, within 5-minute walk, you're everywhere, right? Everywhere is a backdrop in Richmond, and it's amazing. Whereas Hampton Roads, it's like, okay, you've got Neon District, you've got the Vibe District, you've got, you know, Town Center, you've got all these like little spots, but it's not like Richmond, where Richmond's just like the downtown. Yeah,
because it's great. I mean, it's brilliant. We used it when we were looking for locations for my daughter's senior pictures, and I was like, "Hey, throw up Nick's site and see what interests you." And that's what we used. So that's super cool resource.
Very cool. We got a couple user questions. Try and answer them quick. Where do you see DLR, digital lens rental, going in the next 5 years?
So I think in the next 5 years, I think Richmond's going to overtake Hampton Roads. I think Richmond is going to be very busy, and I think it might even lead to another store probably on the west side, like Short Pump area. But again, it's who knows. We have a 3-year lease in Richmond, and I would like to say that we're going to have multiple stores in 5 years in Richmond, but COVID never corrects itself, then who knows. But I mean, DLR, it's always growing, and this is perspective that makes me feel good about the company. So at one point this year, we were down 78%, which is crazy. That's super shocking for me. Do what?
In 2020, you're saying?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 2020. I forgot it's 2021. But 2020, we were down 78%, and we finished the year down 10%. And I was like, that's a blessing in disguise, because it's made me open my eyes to a lot of different situations and just a lot of aspects of the business that we can improve on. And I think had that not happened, I think that we would have kept going in the same direction, which we were still growing, but I think there was a lot of little issues that I wouldn't have noticed, and we all wouldn't have noticed, that we needed to correct. So
is there something you can directly attribute to that?
I think it's just lack of knowledge in business. You know, I didn't go to school for business, and I'm not
No,
an
the
accountant. I'm
78
not a
down to
CPA.
10%. The 78 to 10%.
Oh yeah, I mean, well, if you look at it, as soon as we had the shutdown, I mean, everything pretty much stopped.
Were
I
you
mean,
shut down? Were you shut down for those 3 months?
we did not shut down. We ended up never having to shut down,
But
fortunately.
people stopped coming in because
Right.
other things were shut. Got it.
Yeah,
So
and
indirectly, you were shut down, if you will.
right, yeah, indirectly. And we had customers here and there, but you know, I think we had I think it was March or something, we made $400 or something, $500, which is insane. It's absolutely insane to think about. But and then that's where I think, you know, cash is king in the situations. That's the saying, cash is king. And I think it's making people go, instead of saying, hey, we have 6 months worth of revenue saved, I think people now are going, well, maybe we need 12, maybe we need 18 months of revenue, because who knows what's going to happen. So,
Well, in fat economies, let's just call it that. In fat economies, I think people overspend on things that are unnecessary. And I don't know what book you're reading right now, but you've talked a little bit about the overspending of things. I think when you start looking at things in a more broke mindset or a more lean mindset, I think you're smarter about those things. All right, a couple more questions. How much failure has contributed to your success, from Patrick James?
as far as the failure aspect, I mean, the hardest failure is when people steal equipment. That is
I
when you
remember
start.
those stories. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was in the very first theft. I was actually in Hatch when this started, and it's a growing pain, and it's still a growing pain. And you know, I was doing paper
And
forms.
it's not like someone broke into the place and stole something.
Right.
It's someone who rents and doesn't return is what theft is in this case.
So this person rented, and nothing seemed shady about this person at all. And so they rented a camera and a lens and never came back. So I was able to track them down through social media and through phone numbers, and they made a lot of mistakes on their part, but I won't go too much in details about that. But I was able to track them down. I was actually there when they got arrested, which was about 6 months later. And to this day, I've received only a portion of the money that they owe me in restitution because they stopped paying. And it's one of those things where you sit back and you go, wow, I just lost $3, $4, $5,000 worth of equipment. And now what? And so, you know, it's those failures when you look at yourself and you go, why did I do that? Why didn't I put something in place to help make this business more successful? What was it that I did personally that made this situation fail? And that's when we started implementing things. And so, you know, once that happened, we started doing electronic forms. And then we had someone else who rented a piece of equipment and then returned a different piece of equipment that wasn't ours. It was the same lens, but it was different and it was broken. And at the time, we were small enough that I pretty much had an idea of like what our serial numbers were, because they're very obvious on Canon equipment of what they are. And when it returned, you know, our employee at the time was like, "Oh yeah, they said it didn't work, whatever, blah blah." And I was like, "Well, what's the serial number on it?" And I was in Charlotte, North Carolina at that time, and I was like, "That's not a serial number that we have for that lens." And I was like, "I'll deal with it when I get back." Well, it turns out the lens was broke. They super glued the back of it back on the camera, and I said, "Wow." I was like, "Really?" So then I tracked this person down, and this story gets kind of crazy. This person had claimed this lens stolen in Virginia Beach, but they still had it in their possession. So they sent it back to me. So I contacted my buddy who's a Virginia Beach detective, and I said, "Hey, here's the situation." He helped me out. Turns out the guy had a friend return the right lens, and I gave him his lens back. And I was like, "Yeah, you're never renting again." He shows up like 6 months or 7 months later trying to rent, and I was like, "No, you're not renting from us. Are you crazy? Like, no, you're not renting from us." And he's like, "Oh, I thought you would like forgive and forget." And I was like, "Maybe at some point, but not right now." So look, it gets better. It gets better. So fast forward to this year, and a buddy of mine contacts me. He's like, "Hey man, I have this lens that needs to be repaired. It was broken. I did it in a trade deal." I was like, "All right, cool. Bring it by. We'll take a look at it." And I pulled this. Lydia was in the office, and I had this lens. I was like, "Man, this reminds me of the guy who tried to swap out this lens for our lens for this broken one. I was like, wait a minute. I was like, I'm going to look up this serial number. And it's the same lens. So it comes full circle back that I'm like, so I contact the guy and I was like, here's the story. This is what happened. You need to contact the police because this is this is considered stolen equipment, even though it technically wasn't stolen. And he's like, you've got to be kidding me. But it's insane. But yeah, those kind of failures you learn from.
The Fervent Four is powered by the Small Business Development Center, which helps local small businesses grow through counseling. If you're interested in learning more on how the SBDC can help your business, head to startwheel.org/weekly.
I think a lot of times people, when they're starting a business, they overdo some things. And I think in your case, I mean, look, you didn't think that some of these things were going to happen in that kind of way. So you can't foresee that happening. And once those challenges start happening, then you start to do it. All right. Josie Colley says, since opening your second location, do you think it would be easier to grow more and open more locations? Is that your plan?
Easier, no. Do I want to open more locations? Yes. I have a strange thought on this. So just because you're bigger doesn't mean you're going to make more money, and it doesn't mean it's going to be easier. It's definitely going to be harder. But the opportunity is there, so you've got to take full advantage of that opportunity. And if we have the opportunity to open more locations, I would do it in a heartbeat. I'm not going to say to myself, I'm not going to open a location because it's difficult, because business is never going to be easy, and making money is never going to be easy, and surviving is going to be way harder. So, you have to be up for that challenge, and we're up for that challenge. And yeah, that's a plan. I'm ready for more locations, and I'm ready to grow this business further and make it, the dream that it's supposed to be.
Opportunity and timing, they're incredibly important. Xerxes Nabong, who owns a couple of escape rooms in the area, he said on the show and to me multiple times, he's like, there's a window that this can be successful for. And I'm trying to make as much money possible during that window, because I know at some point that this thing is going away. Remember, laser tag used to be popular? It's not anymore to the same extent. And I think it's the same thing. Timing is important. Tim, thoughts?
I agree, Zach. Makes sense to me.
Yeah. Overall, the show, Nick, what do you think about just what you learned today? Anything?
Well, I learned Tim has a nicer beard than Zach, maybe nicer hair, but I think for people watching the show, they probably don't. Some of them don't know our history, but Zach actually is one of the people who knew me from the beginning when I started DLR and opened his doors and said, "Hey, why don't you come over here?" And you're pretty much a mentor, and you've been a mentor this whole time. And I met Tim through you, and Tim's opened his doors for me up in Williamsburg, and I got the opportunity to talk up there. And I think that's probably so important to a lot of people in business is finding those people who can support you and tell you the truth and not hold back. And something you've always said, Zach, that I always think is hilarious is you said it's so funny when people say they've done something or they've opened a business and they're like, "Oh, congratulations, you've opened the business." And he's like, "No, congratulate me when I make payroll every month." And
Right.
now it's so much truth in that. It's congratulate me when this is all said and done, because it's an uphill battle the entire time, and there might be a little bit of an easy stretch, but it's always uphill, and it's always trying to figure out what works best. And when you surround yourself with greatness like Tim, and then good people like, no, I'm just kidding, Zach, you're great as well. But putting good people around you is key. And putting, I've met so many awesome people through DLR, and I've met so many creative minds, and seeing how people have evolved and seeing what people are doing to make things work it's inspiring. So
I think the key in that statement that I made that I forgot that I made that was so profound is basically like opening the business is such an easy thing in
Right.
in theory.
$50.
right?
Yep.
Yes, I mean, getting a business license, yes. And, you know, some businesses cost more, and maybe there's some congratulations that is necessary and stuff like that. But like getting those customers in at a frequency that allows you to actually live the life that you want, I think is so much more powerful and so much more difficult than people are giving it even an ounce of credit for. And I think we've made it so that you post a picture on Instagram and you get that instant gratification that someone's like, oh my God, this is amazing. It's like, but all you did was like this or comment on it. You never even showed up. You never bought equipment, like, or something like that. And it's just getting those people to actually buy from you is so much harder than just saying congrats on Facebook or congrats that you did something. And so that's where I wanted you to take that in and for others to take that in. So it's,
and I think something people need to realize, and this is something I asked our group, is I said, you know, what have you done for your loyal customers? What have you done in the past? What are you doing for your customers who helped you get where you are? And, you know, one thing I did was I started emailing customers and saying, even if I hadn't seen them in a while, I was like, hey, I appreciate your support over this last year. This last year has obviously been difficult for everyone, but you still found time and you still used us and you kept your rentals local, and we appreciate it. Like, here's a monetary value that you can use towards your next rental or whatever you want to do. It doesn't matter. There's no catch to this. Just, it's a literal thank you from a personal email from me. So, you know, I think it's small things like that that we lose track of when you get so large. And I think that you can't lose track of that. You can't lose track of the people who helped you get where you are. And the same thing with your employees. Like, I'll never forget, and there's no way I can thank my past employees enough who have helped me, especially starting the business, because we had no clue what we were doing. We still have no clue on some things. You know, we're trying to figure it out. And I appreciate everything everyone has done to get the company to this point, because it's more than just me. So
hashtag be thankful.
Hashtag be thankful.
My last parting question I have is, I look back and smile thinking about some of the nights we would have after events, and Zach would be literally wiping the
tearing
sweat
down the
out
house. He'd be tearing down the house.
In terms of spicy food, who can digest and handle the spicier food between you two?
I would definitely think me. I'm up for that challenge, but you're just gonna have to eat the hot sauce off spoons.
I miss those times. I look back and smile. Those were fun times.
Yeah.
It's been an absolute great conversation with you, Nick. This has been lovely. I probably would lose in the hot. I mean, I can take it, but I would definitely. It would be an unfortunate scene of events. Is the way that I'd put it. So
I would enjoy it.
You know, you would think the guy from Buffalo would be able to handle hot food, but he can't. He's weak. He gets the extra Mount sauce at Dirty Buffalo.
That is fake news.
Hey, did you hit your goal, by the way? Your running goal?
Yeah, I hit 2,700 miles last year.
That's awesome, dude. Congrats on that.
Thanks, man.
Zach, what about you? We're not ending yet. I want to know. How did you do?
I did not hit 2,700 miles.
No, you're doing an Ironman, right?
Yeah, I did it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Thank you. Hashtag be thankful.
Nick, I can't wait to see you at some concerts. You always got the best seat in the house. But man, I sure miss it.
Yep. Yeah, me definitely.
To when we can see each other in person. Until next time, peace and pancakes, y'all. And check out Digital Lens Rental. Laters.